Hi, I'm Veronica Karweski, and I'm a special education teacher and an Orton Gillingham tutor. Before I left the classroom, I was also the reading intervention specialist at the last school I worked at. And part of my mission is to support as many teachers as I can because our students will grow in that regard. And also, I want teachers to enjoy their time working with students and to reduce their stress. So today we're talking all about diagnostic assessments. There are three main reasons we want to use a diagnostic assessment when we first start working with students. Reason number one is we want to know what skills students already know and what we really need to target our instruction on. Reading intervention is not like teaching an ELA curriculum because it's individualized to the student. So we have to know what they know. Reason number two, and this is especially important for teachers in the classroom, especially special education teachers, we want to collect a baseline so that way we can measure progress throughout the year, and we also have all of our data and documentation ready for IEP meetings. And reason number three is if you are working with multiple students at once, you may want to group them according to their skills so that way you can target instruction and you are not leaving any student out. So those are the three main reasons we want to collect a diagnostic assessment, to figure out what students know, a baseline, and to be able to group accordingly. Now, there are 5 major subsections that I consider for a diagnostic assessment. I'm going to go through the sections, and then as I do that, I'll be telling you about free resources you can use in order to collect these subsections or to administer them. However, if you want a comprehensive all-in-one assessment, you can check out the assessment I created at within the description of this video. I'm not going to link the free resources, so just pay attention, listen, and you can Google them. So I'll go through the 5 sections and then I'll tell you about free resources to measure them. So there's 5 sections that you want to assess when you're first starting to work with new students. Phonemic awareness, which is hearing and manipulating the sounds in spoken words. Decoding, which is being able to kind of sound out or be able to break down words according to the sounds in their words or the kind of concepts of the English language. Phonics, being able to read words. That's what decoding is. The third section is spelling. Spelling is sometimes left out, and certainly if you have your own goals that you're working on as a special education teacher, spelling might not be one of them, but I still think it's important. So you want to assess if students can not only decode or read words, but they can spell them. The fourth section is fluency. So that's how they can read, or how students can read a passage, their rate, how quickly they're able to read, and how accurate they're able to read. We also want to assess things like prosody, being able to kind of group words in phrases that make sense, and being able to read with accurate, or being able to read with appropriate expression based on the passage. So it's fluency. The 5th section is comprehension. Ultimately, that's our final goal usually with reading, is to be able to comprehend or understand what you're reading. That might include being able to retell facts in order, but also to make deeper inferences about what the author is trying to say but isn't stated directly. Now, you can also assess writing. That's also important. But these to me are the 5 main components of good literacy diagnostic. So again, that would be phonemic awareness, decoding, spelling, fluency, and comprehension. Now, I'm going to tell you about some free resources you can collect and use to assess those areas. Certainly when I was first starting out, I did not have the funds in order to be able to buy a full literacy assessment, and I'm very grateful to the free resources that are out there. So if this is you, please listen up, take some notes, and you can Google the resources I'm talking about. So for phonemic awareness, you can look up the PAST assessment, P-A-S-T. This will help you see how well your students can break apart the syllables in spoken words, be able to segment and change the sounds in a variety of different words, whether it be the first sound, the last sound, the middle sound, sounds and consonant blends. So that's P-A-S-T, the PAST assessment for phonemic awareness. Now, the second section is the core phonics assessment for decoding. That's a great free resource. It allows you to see how many letter sounds your students know, if they're able to read single and even multi-syllable words. It's a great all-in-one decoding assessment. I will say it doesn't go super detailed for longer words, or it doesn't break longer words into subsections. So that's the only kind of downside I would say for the core phonics assessment, CORE. One great thing about the core is that it provides nonsense words, so you can assess if students are really able to decode or sound out words, or if they simply memorized a lot of words. So that's for decoding. The third area that I mentioned, fluency, or actually, sorry, the third area is spelling. I haven't used it that much, but I know there's a words your way free spelling assessment. So words, one word, your way. The last two words, you can Google that, and that should provide a spelling assessment where they do break down spelling skills by category, which can be helpful if you're targeting spelling instruction. And then the last two sections of your diagnostic assessment would be fluency and comprehension. For fluency, the DIBELS assessment, but like, I'm not sure what to call it, like a bundle, or it's very thorough. They have reading fluency benchmarks for grades, I think K through 8, and they also have progress monitoring for grades K through 8, and it's free as well. I believe it's from the University of Oregon. So DIBELS is DIBELS, and that's a great free resource to assess your students' fluency. And they do have a comprehension section. It's usually, I believe it uses maze, which is where students kind of fill in the blank for a word that would make sense in the sentence. It's not the most comprehensive comprehensive comprehension assessment, so just be aware of that. But it's a great free resource for fluency, DIBELS, DIBELS. Now, in a moment, I'll show you my assessment, and you can find that at the bottom as well if you're looking for an all-in-one that you don't have to hunt and gather and find. But again, those free resources. For phonemic awareness, you can look up the PAST assessment. For decoding, you can look up the core phonics assessment. For spelling, you can look up the words your way assessment for spelling. And then for fluency and comprehension, you can check out the DIBELS assessment, DIBELS. Now, I created my own diagnostic assessment for a few reasons. Number one is I was sick of hunting for and trying to print out several different pieces of assessment at once and be able to combine them all together. I found that to be just a little stressful and time consuming. And then also having taught in middle school and teaching older students, I could not really find a great comprehension piece for assessment. And so I wanted something that would be able to not just have students kind of circling the words that would make sense in the sentence, but really answering literal and inferential questions after reading a passage. So I created an assessment, and I also worked with metametrics. So I have some lexiled passages in my assessment as well, which can be helpful when you're reporting to parents. Like your student is able to read this amount of words and answer questions based on this lexile level passage, because lexiles are often banded with grade equivalent. So it gives just a little bit better idea of where students are reading at. So really briefly, I'm going to go over my diagnostic assessment. And also one reason why I created this is because I know that teachers are going to a lot of different meetings, and they need to be able to have a quick snapshot of students' progress and be able to have reliable data. And it can get overwhelming if you're working with even a few students, but certainly if you're a school-based reading intervention teacher and you have many, many students, it can get overwhelming. So I created this summary table, and there's also a digital option as well in the assessment I'm linking below, where you can type in diagnostic information and then send it to whoever you want. I'm actually preparing to give this to a student who I haven't seen all summer. We're resuming tutoring, so I have all this printed, so I kind of will show you briefly. This is the data collection summary sheet. So you'll have the phonemic awareness categories. You can put their results as far as like how many they got correctly, and kind of where they are at in phonemic awareness. I have decoding broken down by different sections, and then a place for results as well. I also have irregular words. I didn't mention that in the what I talked about earlier, but there are words that we cannot necessarily sound out by code. So being able to know what students are able to recognize and what irregular words they know is important as well. So there's a section for that as well. I have spelling broken down by different levels just based on the complexity of words. And then I have fluency, where you can like kind of write the name of the passage, the Lexile level, how many words correctly per minute, and their comprehension for kind of where they're at reading independently. I would recommend putting this here. I would think independently would be if they're able to answer like 3 out of 4, 2 out of 3 comprehension questions correctly, depending on like the level you're looking at for accuracy. And then there's also a section on here where you can name other assessments that you might have given the student or that they are that the school has administered, a summary of that data. And then also, and this is super helpful for special education teachers, based on this, you can identify areas of strength, areas of need, IEP goals, and then a recommendation plan. So that is the data collection summary. Then breaking down the different subsections. This is the phonemic awareness section of the assessment. This is all you would need because it's all spoken. The student would not need to read anything out loud from their own copy. And then just a place to record everything. So that's phonemic awareness. Now for decoding, I think I showed this earlier in the video. There's student copies of all of the words, and they're labeled by, like, you can tell it's a student copy because that's labeled in the corner. And then there are numbers. It looks like they've gotten a little bit cut off, but like you'll see, like this is student copy 5. And then that corresponds with your recording sheet. So like this is where you would record their answers. And if you notice, there's a little 5. So that way you can follow, like if they're on sheet 1, you can follow along and record their answers as quickly as they can read. So that's the decoding section. And then for spelling, there are included spelling papers where students can record, and then the spelling subsection is here. So this is where you would record student information from their spelling assessment. And level 1 is single syllables. Level 2 is multisyllabic words, so 2 or 3, so it looks like 2 syllables. And also some vowel tunes are in section 2. Section 3 would be less common vowel teams. Schwa, Y is a vowel, so we're getting more complex with our spelling. 4 would be, level 4 would be advanced spelling concepts, and level 5 would be irregular words. So that's where you could record spelling. And it goes on to another page. There's also a irregular word sheet as well. And I will say you don't have to administer all of these if you don't need them all. Like you can kind of pick and choose. But certainly if you are needing a lot of data, should be everything you need in one. And then the most important part that I'm excited about is the fluency and comprehension pieces. So I worked, like I said, with Metametrics, and they are the people who do the official lexiling of passages. And so when I have these Lexile levels here, they've been verified. These are not guesses. They're certified through Metametrics. So reliable data to be able to take to IEP meetings. So there's 3 Lexile passages right now. I might do more in the future. There is the 3 passages. I'll start with the first one. This is for students kind of approximately in grade 1 or K. The Lexile is 250. They would read this passage, and then you have a recording sheet where you can track their accuracy, record any errors, and then there's comprehension questions that you can answer, or they can answer and you can give them. Now, I didn't print it out, but if you prefer to have kind of bigger text, there's also a section where like you have this just on one page and then this on a separate page. So if this print is too small for you, you also have that in two separate sections that are a little bit bigger. The second passage is the garden contest, and that is on Lexile 600 for students who are in grades 2 to 3. And as you're doing this, if like you're working with a student who is several grades behind grade level, their current grade level, you can administer all of them and just kind of see where they're reading at, which can be a helpful tool or a helpful piece of data to provide to teachers and parents. So the final passage is the Lighthouse Keeper's Daughter. And this is Lexile 1000 or grades 4 to 5. And so the point of this part of the assessment is not to say exactly what Lexile students are reading at, but to be able to say in the diagnostic assessment, student Sally was able to read, 140 words correctly in 1 minute, and answer 3 out of 4 comprehension questions. And there's also a scoring guide within the comprehension piece. So actually it's not just like 3 out of 4 questions correctly. You can see if they can answer all the pieces of the comprehension question or just some of them. So this assessment is linked at the bottom of this video in the description. And if you are watching this when it is released, it is on sale right now. It won't be on sale forever. So if you're watching this on August, I think it's August 3rd today, it's going to be on sale for about 24 hours. So if you made it for the end of the video, please make sure to snag the assessment while it's on sale. And if you have questions about the literacy diagnostic, anything about what we've talked about in this video, please list it down at the bottom and I'll make sure to answer you. Now for this week, August 3rd, I am doing a few special things during this week. I'm really trying to support reading intervention teachers as much as possible. So there's going to be another video tomorrow on systems and structures for running your reading intervention classroom. So make sure to tune back for that. And also, if you receive this video in the email I sent, there is a Q&A form. If you list any questions you have about reading intervention, you'll be able to get a free resource at the end of this week. I believe it is a free back to school activity sheet for a reading intervention class, and you'll be entered to win a giveaway for one of my resources from my TPT store. So I'm excited about all of that, and just drop any questions you have about diagnostics in the description or in the questions down below. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great school year. Thanks.